Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for the fourth event in our first ever online storytelling festival. My goodness, the day's actually going very fast, isn't it, Beverly? Yes.
Yeah, we couldn't wait for the day to come, but now
Yeah,
it's here. It's
it's
it's certainly been jam-packed.
yeah, it certainly has. Now, I'm Susan Stewart. I've been working as festival manager, helping out Beverly and Rachel, who's the creative director of the festival. And some of you are bound to see Rachel in other events. And I've worked in mostly in financial services in my professional life, and in that I've been involved in a lot of technical business writing, and Beverly is an expert, I would say, in an area that I've worked a little bit in. Beverly is a highly accomplished technical bid writer and technical writer. She's got over 20 years experience in working on complex multi-billion pound projects in multiple sectors and in particularly in writing bids. So that's what we're going to focus on today, the importance of plain English in a bid. How do you make sure that your bid is the winning bid, basically? So Beverly, that's about it, really, isn't it?
Yeah, that's fine. Yes, I do work largely in bid work, but to be honest, I cut my teeth right at the beginning with technical writing. I had was commissioned to put together a huge health and safety manual for a construction company. And health and safety is a prime subject in
Absolutely.
construction.
Yeah.
And this was a hugely important document. And that's really where I started with big technical writing that was complex and many faceted.
Yes.
So that was an interesting project.
Those were very interesting. And of course, if you didn't get that right, there were consequences.
And serious ones too.
Serious ones.
Serious ones
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. No, that's fascinating. But now you're I don't know what we've called the term. Are you a bid doctor? Would that be a good term? That you get
There is a company called the Bid Doctor, but
all right,
if
so
we
that's
were
you.
just, I work as a consultant. People employ me to help them win work and grow their business through tendering, which is a viable way to do
Yes.
to grow your business.
Mhm.
And I work largely in bid management and leadership. I help them save the day really, because 9 times out of 10 they're calling me in when they've lost the will to live and they haven't organized themselves and the deadlines are looming. And that's the thing about bids. You're working in a very pressurized environment. You have to produce the best quality that you possibly can, and make sure you've got your strategy and plan correct to win that work. And it's often a multidisciplinary team. It's not just digging holes or building brick walls. It is often engineers, people in water, people in education, people in sustainability is a huge issue
Mhm.
in a stream in construction. Biodiversity is a big thing. Design often comes together. The financial piece comes together, plus the deep engineering. So it's a multidisciplinary team, and each one of those disciplines have their own way of working. So
Yeah.
you as the bid manager, you have to bring all these messages together in a cohesive, comprehensive way so that the person reading it eventually and marking it and scoring it can make sense of it.
Yeah. So so if you're called in perhaps at a late stage, what's the first thing you do then? How do you get these people organized? Do you just say stop?
In fact, that is exactly what I do. So a lot of people don't. What would have happened before I got there is they would have divvied up the various questions. They think, oh, this is a health and safety question. This is an HR question. This is a methodology question. So we'll give the methodology to the project director or the project manager or the site manager, and health and safety will get that question, and HR will get the other question, and so on. And what often happens is no one's coordinated their input. And so someone will say, oh, answer this question on health and safety, and he'll go away and he'll beaver away and write a response that is so unconnected to anything else,
Mhm.
because he hasn't understood, or no one's put them in the picture as to how they're actually going to win it. What are the win themes? What are the golden nuggets? What are our competitions? What's our competition doing? Do we understand what they're doing? Do we actually understand what the client wants more than anything else? You know, sometimes clients don't know what they want. So what I generally do is I stop. I don't care which phase of the bid we're in. We might have a week to go. We might have 3 days to go. I will do a strategy session, even if it's for half an hour in the day, or for a full day. And it just puts everybody on the same page. And it also makes them ask the key question, is this the right bid we should be doing? Because often I find a lot of clients, they will undertake a bid because it sounds like it's something they should be doing, but they've not understood how they make money in it. Can they deliver it? Can they make a profit in it? And do they have the resources? Do they have the mobilization funds? Because a big project, often people look at the big numbers and they'll say, oh, this is a £10 million bid. But if you're a £300,000 turnover company, nobody's going to award you a £10 million bid. Absolutely. You know,
I do remember one of the biggest arguments I ever had with my boss's boss's boss was because I said, oh no, we shouldn't respond to that tender. And he was like, no, but we can do it. I said, no, we can't actually. We pretend we can do it, but we can't do it. It's a poison chalice. Walk away. And
exactly. So if you don't stop and ask those key questions before you even start, then you could get yourself into deep water quite quickly. Yeah. And I mean, tendering and bid management and so on is a hugely expensive task because of the number of hours you have to put to get that winning bid over the line. So yes, I do ask them to stop. I gather them, their thinking, get them to ask the right questions, and fundamentally, should we be going for it? But also, how are we going to win it? You know, what should each of our questions be answering? What's our golden thread? And apportioning what the fundamental message is that we are running through. So in a lot of construction, it is, we are the safe pair of hands, Mr. Client. You can trust us. And how do we demonstrate that? So we sift through how we're demonstrating, because it's often say it, then see it. Okay, that's what I always say. Say it and then see it. So demonstrate that you are the safe pair of hands that you want your customer to spend 300 million with, or 250 million with, or 57 billion with over 7 years, as in HS2 or more. And so these are key questions. I do get them to stop, and that certainly helps the writing process that follows.
Yeah, and then for the writing process itself, for people who are watching, I don't know how much experience these people have in bids, but often, for instance, now you're doing an electronic submission, you're typing into a box on a screen, so your language has to be concise, has to be accurate, and you come up against word limits, don't you?
Exactly. Not only word limits, but page limits. And also a lot of the time you can't put in a diagram. You know, a diagram often tells a 1,000 words, but you can also get that quite wrong, quite frankly. But so choice of diagram is hugely important. But you're absolutely correct, Susan. You know, you have to be concise. You have to be clear. And this is where plain English comes in. We don't have time or space. Sometimes it's even just to the character. You know, you can only have so many characters, and each letter is a character space.
Yeah.
And so use of words is absolutely vital to get that message across. And sometimes the highfalutin language doesn't really help us.
Yeah, well, that's made me think of a quote from our first event this morning, Perfectly Plain, which was people should watch it find it on YouTube. It was very informative and enjoyable. And Hugh Davies is an educator. He said that there's almost a badge of honor sometimes in using jargon to make your work impenetrable. And I think people do that, even in business writing, in bid process. And why?
I think sometimes a lot of it is based on fear, because particularly when you're dealing with complex projects, there is so much to write about, and so they think they can't forget to say something. They have to put everything in, and so it looks, excuse the phrase, it looks like they've just vomited everything on a page. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I often come in and it's just like a splat on a page, and it's all there, and it's totally unreadable. And sometimes I look at it and I think, oh, my heart just sinks. But I also feel physically ill just looking at all these notes on a page, and I think, who's going to read that? No one, with big words, little words, and just no punctuation, no structure, no form. And that's often 9 times out of 10, or a large part of what I do, is to give structure. I just want to refer to the American designer Edwin Schlossberg here, and this is, I'm saying this very, very particularly, is the skill of writing is to create a context in which other people can think.
Oh, no, that's
I just absolutely love that.
yes.
Create the space for people to think. So if you have vomit on a page, no one's going to be thinking. They're just going to glaze over,
Verbiage. Yeah.
Exactly. Verbiage, glaze over. I just call it glaze over material. No one's going to read that. And yet you expect to be scored and win something. And the audience on the other side, sometimes you do know who the audience is. Sometimes you don't know who the audience is. And also you can't make assumptions. It's like, how long is a piece of string, really? You can't make assumptions. So your rule of thumb really is you've got to expect the person sitting on the other side doesn't know what you are talking about. Yes. So we've got to find a balance between correct level of professional language,
Right. Yep.
versus practical, understandable language. So I'll come back to that, but I'm just wanting to look at structure.
Yep.
And looking at the balance of words. So structure really is about giving the reader an opportunity to navigate the topic. Okay, so you use headings, you use paragraphs, and you use graphics sometimes if you get that opportunity, and you use taglines. So you're forcing a pattern of thinking as they turn a page, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep. Do you mean what's the tagline in this context?
oh, okay. So you'll have a heading. So, I mean, we've used taglines in our program. So we've said perfectly plain as the heading, and then we've told them educating and communicating in plain language. So we want, so even though we say, so our heading might be continuous improvement and innovation, we might use a tagline to say, Beverley Varley Consultancy uses continuous improvement, etc., so that you, Mr. Client, can always be ahead of the game. Do you see? So you force a way of thinking in relation to that topic or that heading. So the client wants you to cover continuous improvement and innovation. So you say, here it is, I've written about it, but this is how I want you to think about it.
So you give them a clue almost before they read the body text.
I mean,
yes.
Exactly. So, and then my other point about creating structure is you go macro to micro. That makes it very easy for people to navigate a document. So continuous improvement and innovation, tagline as a sub to that. And then you might have a picture about your innovation, and also that tagline also forces the client to think in a particular way. And then you move into the detail. So they got choice. If they just ran their finger down on a page or a subject, down their headings and the taglines, they'll be able to understand that whole piece immediately.
Yeah.
And then they can decide, do I want to go into the micro? Okay, so they've covered continuous improvement, tick. They've covered innovation, tick. Okay, what are they saying about innovation and continuous improvement now? How are they going to get there? How have they demonstrated it? What makes them different in continuous improvement and innovation than anyone else? Do you see what I'm saying? So if you don't ask those questions beforehand, it's just going to be a big blur and, as you say, verbiage on a page. And we don't want that, because then your writing doesn't have impact. Okay, and it doesn't keep it simple and easy to read. So keeping your audience in mind is absolutely vital. Accepting that they probably know something about it, because they expect you to be the professional. So you've got to find this balance of words. And the rule of thumb I generally use about finding balance between the must words and the choice words. So the must words are reflecting the client's language. So if they want to know about your methodology to construct a bridge, they expect a certain level of professional language and technical terms in that. And so you, as the author or editor or wherever, whichever point you're coming in, what are the words I have to use? So make a list of that. And then on the other side is take a look at the words you've written and say, I could probably do without that word, or make it simpler using plain English. And so that's what I generally do. I say, oh, these are my must words to show I'm professional. Yep. I know what I'm talking about and provide that safety and confidence to my customers. And then on the other side, I will just say, okay, what are the words I don't really need and I've used, but they're a waste of space and time, and they just detract from the message.
Yeah, but you having to tell bid teams in an organization, and maybe it's somebody who's worked in that organization for a long time, maybe done other bids before. You have to tell them, no, that's not the right language, and they're wedded to their own way of working and their own way of writing. Does that come up?
Yeah, all the time. People get attached to their writing. It's you would have written reports in your day. You feel quite passionate about what you write, isn't it? Yes. You feel like part of your soul has gone onto that page a little bit. And I often find some people have strong attachment to certain words, certain phraseology, etc. And sometimes we do come to blows, and have to resort to getting the top dogs to pull rank or whatever the story is. Or I use reviewers. I do reviewing as part of the process, which will tease out and weed out attachment to words or phraseology. So I'll get 2 and 3 and 4 other people might look at it in the process. So one of my strongest ones is peer review. Right. So if you've written a response, I've written a response, they may be linked, they may be separate, but I'll get you to read mine and I will review yours, and we'll give each other a viewpoint. And that often sorts a lot of problems out. The other way to do it is just to do what I call a red review. So my red team reviewers, they will be people who are not working on the bid, but have deep knowledge of either the subject or the business. So they will come in and they will review something, and they will often comment on language, use of terms, and or content. And and then obviously we work our way through that with the author and myself, etc., to get to the final product.
Yeah, no, I think the red review is I remember in doing bids, you were almost more nervous about the red review than you were about submitting to the client, because they have such deep knowledge of your business that they may well.
Sometimes it's nicer. It's quite good to be on the outside slightly, and they respect you for that, because you can look at it more strategically and with sort of a calmer head and a heart, and more objectively, whereas they live and breathe it. So they will take your view on board, but ultimately it's that client's bid. I can simply give a view and provide some insight, etc. But they own the bid. They're going to have to deliver the work once they win it. I just had a recent experience. I was helping a company review a bid for education, and they'd written a document. They were 3 professional. One was a psychologist, one was a sports coach, and the other one was a business person. So they'd come together with this proposition to deliver something for Bradford schools on education and sport. And so they'd each written this, they'd contributed, etc. And they asked me to review it as a completely external objective person. And I pulled it together I gave them advice on structure and language and all of those things. And they said, and this was like a day's work or something like that. And they said, oh my God, I didn't realize we could do all those things. And they were page counted restricted. And they were in absolute awe, just in that small exercise. It wasn't a big bid. It was about a 5-page thing, a proposal, and with the pricing and so on. But I just made them think about it differently. And also they were incumbent. So this was a rebid, which it makes it even harder. I think the rebid is the hardest because you know too much.
Yeah.
And you think, okay, what are you going to play? What aren't you going to play with all this information? Whereas if you were coming in cold, you, as a newbie, you can promise the earth, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
and you don't necessarily don't have to deliver.
Exactly. I mean, I found that I did work on one bid, which was we were the incumbent, and it was the rebid, and it was a very important piece of business for the business unit I worked in. It basically underpinned our entire business. And I found there were two reactions from senior management would say things like, well, we're going to win this, aren't we? Because it's ours. We know how to do this. And that, which is, as one of my American colleagues said, they were fat, dumb and happy. And then, of course, the other reaction is complete opposite. Is like, oh, we know all the pitfalls in this business, and we know what areas we didn't price correctly in stage one, and it's cost us money to deliver, what we asked. So we have to review our pricing, and it's getting that balance in a rebid. It's a horrible situation.
Yeah, and it could easily go wrong, isn't it? You could take it all for granted. Oh, we're in here, we're definitely going to win it again.
Yeah.
But there's so much that you don't know that your client may want. So you might have been delivering for 3 years, but the next 3 years the goalposts might have changed and you're not aware of it. So it is a difficult thing.
Well, you've been trying to upsell them on something for the past 3 years, and all of a sudden they want it, and you think, oh dear, now I'm going to have to build that.
Exactly.
Yeah. These are the things that they don't quite tell you in business school.
No. One of the things that I think is quite important to note when you looking at keeping language simple and plain, it's an old journalist thing I learned a long time ago, is calculating the readability index.
Yes, you mentioned that, and when we were talking about this earlier, and I thought, that sounds really fascinating.
Yeah, it sounds a little scientific, but it isn't. But it is based on the principle that we, to keep your sentences short, 1 unit per sentence, because as I said, sometimes I'm called in and it's just verbiage on a page, and no punctuation, etc., trying to get everything in one long breath. So I think, okay, where am I going to breathe in this? So my first step is to put in some full stops. 1 concept, 1 unit of thought,
one idea
equals 1 sentence. Yes. And then the other thing I do is I avoid tautology. I just strip out, where they've said something twice, but in a different way. We want to say it once, but we want to say it with impact and clearly so. And then also just to use active verbs. Okay, so those are the 3 principles I use. But when it comes to readability index, and that's stolen a little bit from journalism, and it's just an interesting thing I found that said, so how we do the readability index, I think in Word, they will give you the index. Okay,
right, in Word.
But I'm still old school. I like to do it sort of manually, because I can then also work out the tone, how it sounds. And the readability index is calculated on the average sentence length, meaning the number of words in a sentence, and then the percentage of the long words. So long words are 3-syllabled words.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the readability index is calculated by adding up the results of those 2 things.
Of those analyses.
Okay. So on average, and this is interesting because it comes from journalism, the various newspapers use different readability indices for their publications. So the Financial Times, and if you just listen to it, the higher the number, the higher the readability index is, the longer the sentences are, and the more they're using 3-syllable words. Okay, so the Financial Times uses a readability index of 41. No wonder it's not everybody's cup of tea, isn't it? It's not everybody's cup of tea. It's quite technical. The Times uses a readability index of 34.
Right. Yeah.
So that's kind of, that 34, 30 to 35 is quite mainstream.
Right.
Sort of very accessible for most readers. The Telegraph uses a readability of 38. The Guardian, now these are publications in the UK. I haven't looked at anything else. The Guardian newspaper looks at a readability of 36.
So they're roughly similar times.
Yes, yes. So they're probably talking to the same level of audience. The Independent uses a readability of 34. And then at the other extreme, below 30 and below, we're looking at the Daily Express at 30, the Daily Mail at 28, the Daily Mirror at 26, the Sun at 23, probably relies more on pictures, and the Star at 22.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just interesting to know this.
Very interesting.
Because when you're looking at your own writing in that sort of context, you can say, okay, how plain, how simple is my writing? And if you got to a readability index of 22, maybe for a professional audience where you're wanting to provide confidence, perhaps you should up your readability.
That's absolutely fascinating. And it's also, it brings a degree of objectivity.
Yes.
The analysis. So again, taking away that emotion, that feeling of possession, because I've crafted these words with blood, sweat, and tears in many, many occasions. So
exactly. And so we don't need to butt heads about words like triumvirate. Yeah. I had one person in an NHS for an NHS birth who was absolutely adamant to use this word triumvirate when she just meant a group of 3 people. And I remember that very clearly because it was quite a heated discussion.
Yes, oh no, it's just absolutely crazy. Yes. Now,
but then you know, and also, you know, coming onto words like triumvirate and so on. I mean, one of my pet hates is the word utilize. In construction, in infrastructure, they love using the word utilize. And then they also want to spell it the American way, which breaks my heart. But, you know, just use the word use. It's simple. Do you have any pet hates, Susan?
I mean, well, utilize is very definitely one of mine. I mean, when I started my business career, nobody utilized anything. We used things. You know, use is 3 letters, used is 4. What's wrong with that? I don't understand. But another one that really drives me crazy is, and it's more recent years, I would think, is the term as such. People scatter that all over their writing now. And they'll say something like, it's Saturday, and as such, the sun is shining. And you think, no.
The sun is just shining.
The sun is just shining. And I think it makes it sound, they think it's making something sound more formal. Perhaps they think it gives it a more professional air. I don't know. But often it's just, they use the 2 words as such in place of a comma. You just,
oh my gosh,
comma. Yeah. You know, that's all you need. Many, many times I've seen as such being used, it's simply padding. And as such, it should be deleted.
Yes, right? And the other one is hence. Oh, hence. Just say it's what pompous. It is. It doesn't need a hence.
It's pompous, you know. But and actually, we've got a very good question come in from one of the viewers, one of the audience members. And it's a very good question. From all of your experience, and I'm going to ask you, what do you think is the one basic thing that would improve a company's bid writing? What's the one?
Well, in all of my years, and because of how I've been invited into bids, I am a strong advocate of be proactive. My motto of my company is be prepared, be strategic, and beat the competition. So be prepared is be proactive, know what's coming up, qualify your bids, as in make the right choices, which ones you're going to go for and why, and make sure you can win it. Don't do bids you're going to waste your time on. It is too costly to do. And then, so that's the be prepared bit. And do the research. Do the research on the customer, do the research on the project, do the research on your competition, and don't be afraid to go as deep as you need to go. Okay, we don't often have the resources for that, but at least do some research, you know. And
it's an active process. You're not just responding to what the client has sent you.
Yes, often the client doesn't know what they want, Susan. They just throw words on a page themselves because the contract's coming to an end. They need to do a procurement process. They do a copy and paste, and there's often a lot of inconsistency in the information. So also be absolutely clear what the client wants, and they're happy to have a discussion with you and for you to ask those questions, you know. And then be strategic is my second point, which is know how you're going to win it. Yeah. Know what your competition's going to do. Know how you're going to make money. We don't go into bids to win work, not to make money. We have often heard cases of people winning bids because they've underpriced and they get appointed and the whole thing falls over. It's a huge cost to the government purse and public bodies to do procurement. So if it fails, it doesn't cost the government, it costs us, the man in the street.
Yes.
So yeah, be strategic. Know you're going to win it. Know you're going to make money. And often, you know, clients think they want to buy the cheapest, but the cheapest is not often the best. You have to buy twice then. Yes. It's hugely costly.
Absolutely. Beverley, I think that is fascinating. I've got I think there's tips there that can go much wider than bid processes and tendering processes, but I've things that I think, oh yes, on that bid that I did 10 years ago, it probably would have been good to have a Beverley. But I think that's absolutely fascinating. I think your emphasis on the fact that it really is a proactive process. It's not something that you just comes in and you respond and you send it back out. It's much, much bigger than that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, Beverley.
Thank you for the question, Susan, and the audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you, audience, for attending. And I'll just point out that we've got other events on today and tomorrow. And particularly if you're interested in technical writing and clear writing, there are 2 events tomorrow about writing concisely and editing yourself. And those are short and sweet tomorrow morning UK time, that is, which is about being very concise and getting your message across in about 350 words. And then later on in the day tomorrow, we have a very senior and experienced editor from Macmillan Publishers talking about the art of the edit from the book publisher's point of view. So 2 events that I can wholeheartedly recommend to anyone who's enjoyed this. Thank you very much, Beverley.